Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, that way anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Today's date is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Talk about tonight the 59-31 victory over Purdue, and then we will get into the rankings. The rankings just came out a little bit ago. Ohio State is still fourth, so we'll give us our opinions on that at the end of the show. Big win this weekend, John, for the Buckeyes. I'm glad my strategy of picking a closer game for it to be a blowout was successful. That might be going forward, even though I'll probably pick a blowout this weekend and I'll get screwed again. It'll be a close game, but a W close game. But we'll talk about Michigan State later in the week. But I mean, hell of a win for the Buckeyes. I don't really have a lot to nitpick on. I have a couple things in my head, but just what are your general thoughts about the game?
Nice to get the offense rolling again. We've been waiting for this for a while, and people had said, we had only done that against bad defenses, even though I think statistically Indiana's been okay this year. So it's really nice to go out there, and I believe they ran for something like 260, threw for another maybe 360 or 350. Let me just pull it up right here. Yeah, threw for 361, ran for 263. Two almost 100-yard running backs, pretty much 100-yard running backs. Of course, almost 300-yard receivers. So it was just they were executing on all levels of the offense. Defensively, there was some things left to be desired, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, you went up to where you were, and it was kind of just at that point, we were not going to let David Bell beat us on long strikes. So he had 100 yards, but he did it on 10 or 11 targets, or 10 or 11 catches. So he wasn't
no
just
touchdowns.
Right. And he wasn't just killing them, 30, 40, 50 yards at a time. It was 10 yards at a time. So, I mean, I think Ohio State, if you told them like, hey, you got to neutralize David Bell and Karlaftis, and those are going to be your keys to win this game, and they essentially do that very effectively, I think Ryan Day will take that game 10 times out of 10, no matter what the final score was. Because, I mean, really, if you think about it, at one point, this game's 52-17 and it ends up 59-31. So it's not even like last year when it was 35-7 against Indiana and they pull it in within one touchdown. You never got anywhere close to being scared in this game. So I can understand where some people are a little upset about the defensive performance, but honestly, that doesn't bother me at all. I can't get that mad. I mean, of course you want execution. I'm someone that I don't like seeing 400 yards passing. On the flip side, I think Ryan Day, again, like I said, any day of the week, I think he would give up 400 yards passing for a 28-point win.
Yeah. We'll get into the defense a little bit here in a little bit because we're going to start with the offense. But I have some of my thoughts on the defense. I thought they were fine. It was just, there's things Purdue does that, we literally might not see for the rest of the season. Now, if this coming week, when we talk about Michigan State here, if Michigan State comes out and have 400 yards passing, I'm going to have a much bigger issue going into next week and the following weeks because these next several games actually set up pretty well to how Ohio State's defensive strength should be. So, I don't see where the passing game should kill us, going forward with the possible exception of one team, obviously, in the playoff, and we'll talk about that maybe a little later. Offensively, the one thing I was really happy about, and we talked about this the other day, and, I kind of mentioned, and, you were agreeing with me is that, when you're giving up as many backside tackles as they're doing and stuff, sometimes, to isolate a big time pass rush or a big time defensive end that can make plays is just go at him and, run plays at him, make him do different things. And that's always the way I thought the best way to neutralize a really good pass rusher, somebody who's both good in the run game and in the pass rushing, is just you play at him. That you send your blockers at him, and they did a lot of that with what's his face,
Karlaftis.
So I mean, I was pretty happy with that. They threw a lot of things at him, and I mean, he was a non-factor in the game. I mean, he might have had a couple plays in there, but like nothing of note that you come back and say that, yeah, that hurt us there, or he hurt us here. Like, I don't remember any major stretch of the game where his name was called a lot. So, Ohio State did really good going after him.
Yeah, and we had talked about it, and like you said, that sometimes you just got to go after the guy. And I thought it was kind of funny that in the last, when we were talking in the preview show, you actually called out, I think we might have said a toss or whatever, but you said Garrett Wilson and end around, go right at him. Because I was saying, the inside read doesn't really make a lot of sense, that inside zone, when you're not going to keep it with Stroud, which they did. They did one play that he ran a QB sneaker with that motion to it. And then there was that other one that they did the end around and went for a 51-yard touchdown right at George Karlaftis. So I think that was a huge play. Good call on your end, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's something down the road. You see that on Aiden Hutchinson also.
Yeah. And, now that might be, I know Stroud's not a big runner, but, that could be an area if it just slows down a Java or Hutchinson, just to give Henderson or Mayan just a couple extra yards, on a run, even though, they're being signaled on. But for Stroud too, now if you run that motion with Wilson, Stroud could keep it. And, that might be a guaranteed first down for him because nobody's expecting him to keep it. Now everybody's going to be keeping an eye on Wilson. So, I mean, that's where you can use stuff like that in future games to be a benefit towards yourself.
And Mayan Williams ran very powerful against Purdue, which Purdue has a good run defense, and they gave up 260, yards rushing. So again, Ohio State, they weren't intimidated by those guys at all. The offensive line was bullying them around, and Mayan Williams there is something about that dude just never stopping. I mean, obviously Henderson has the top end speed, but Williams loves contact and he will not stop. He runs through people. He keeps those legs chopping, until he goes down. So it's very impressive. And you know what? He had actually more yards per carry than Henderson did also. So he had a hell of a game. Very impressive.
Yeah, we'll take that into my two. I have two nitpicks on the offense. Again, these are just nitpicks. A great offensive game. But these both kind of revolve around the running game. The first one, in the second half, it was nice that we scored 59 points. The most of them we scored in the first half, obviously, but it was just a drag in the second half. There was a point in that game, like where it was very balanced in the first half. Like, I'm just like, a couple times, I think I said it out loud a couple times, but like, hey, and I think you said it once too, that, we do have running backs on the team in the second half. And it was like, they kind of went away from the running game in the second half, where I've been like, no, this is where you run it a little bit more. So I didn't like that. I know Day kind of wants to there was a point, I think he really specifically against Purdue, but I think he also wanted to, throw some highlights out there. He's doing a lot of things. I think he's trying to get CJ into the Heisman conversation. I think he's trying to kick the crap out of Purdue. I think he's trying to make some attention to the playoff committee. But I think it's just to a point that, we can run the ball to try to run the clock out a little bit more. The game was well on hand, and maybe some of those garbage time touchdowns that everybody seemed like they were having an issue about on Twitter maybe don't happen if we just maybe play a little bit more conservative once the game is over, and get our running backs into a position that both. I mean, they were almost both over 100 yards. If they would have just kept on running in that second half, I mean, there might be a possibility where they're both at the buck 50 range, maybe one even approaching the 200 range if you just kind of do that. The only other then I mean that's probably the least of my two nitpicks. I mean, I just wish we would have kept running the ball. It also takes a little less opportunities for injuries, in my opinion, to CJ Stroud if you're doing that a little bit more. The other one, which is a little bit bigger of a nitpick, but again, kind of small for this type of situation, is just that it just seems like the types of running plays they run with Mayan are a little different than the ones they run with Henderson. And, I wish they would still go under pistol a little bit more with Henderson too. He's a big enough boy that you can do the downhill style running with him. And sometimes I think they're trying to do a little too much with him, when I just be like, man, just run that boy right into a hole. And, if he breaks through, I mean, he's going to be gone or 20 yards downfield. And so I know that he's maybe getting him to the outside. He's a little bit more, shifty and stuff like that. But I don't want him to be our outside guy running back that, he's going to be doing these fake, zone reads and, the toss plays. And Mayan's the guy that's running up the middle that, I mean, I get it. Mayan might be a little bit more limited on some of those types of plays to the outside, but I think Henderson can do both. And I just maybe some of those style runs that, those formations we're running with Mayan, we can run a few more with Henderson. The same thing.
I could see that. And I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Receivers, I'll just go over to them. So they all look good. I mean, I think Olave would have taken a catch back, and I know he wishes Rucker didn't get called for a hold on that play too, which that was borderline. I mean, I do think it could have been called a holding, but Ohio State's had a lot of really bad holding calls that haven't been called against them this year.
The one thing I'll say on that one, it was holding, but almost every play has holding on it. The only reason why it was called is because he was taken to the ground. Now, Rucker went to the ground with him, and a lot of times if he kept his hands inside and he went to the ground with him. So the way I kind of look at that is that he wasn't holding him on the outside of the shoulder pads, and he didn't whip him down and then just stay up and try to go block somebody else. Kind of view that as more of a pancake. And you can call holding on almost every play. That is the only situation where I would have said that. Be like, for that type of situation, I might have not have thrown the flag, but I mean, technically it was holding. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Garrett Wilson is just a dynamic receiver, special player. I mean, I know this is going to sound like crazy high praise, but he might have the highest ceiling and a lot of different attributes of receiving. Like, he might have the highest ceiling out of any receiver that's ever been at Ohio State.
Yeah. The thing I really want to talk about Garrett Wilson. So and correct me if I'm wrong, here's kind of my viewpoint of the three of them. So Olave, I mean, he can catch the ball wherever on the field, but he is our deep threat. He is the guy that's going down the field. He's going to use his ability to run routes to get by you.
Yes.
And he does a double move better than almost anybody probably in the country, and to get loose going down the field. I believe that. JSN, he is your pretty much everybody else on the field type of thing. He's catching everything in the middle. He's taking the crossing routes. He's your guy that's going to get you, the easy 10 yards, possibly more. He's deadly down the middle. He's deadly going to the sidelines. I mean, he's just kind of he does everything in the passing game that you have to want for. Now, Garrett Wilson, and we kind of talked about this earlier in the season, but I am now really getting the thought process that this is what Ryan Day is going to do with him. And going forward, this is what Ryan Day is going to do. He's now healthy. He's back from that injury. That he is kind of that Devontae Smith guy that's going to be a little bit everywhere in the field there. He's going to be in motion. He's going to take stuff out of the backfield. He's going to be on the outside. He's going to be on the inside. He's going to be matched up against linebackers at different times. He's going to be matched up on the corners. He's going to be doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think that's the whole point, is that he's now literally he can do everything type of guy. And he's going to be really defenses are going to be circling him where he's out on the field at all times, because find him first. That's going to be like everybody's goal. And that's going to open up so many different things because, I mean, you imagine the things that he could do to you just to do to you, but now imagine what he could do to you as a decoy.
Right.
So there's going to be different stuff like that. And that's just my thought opinion. I think Ryan Day saw that from Devontae Smith last year, and that was kind of his goal this year. And he might have held some of it back, and now it's not going to be held back anymore. Now we're playing the meat of what the schedule. I mean, every team we're going to play on here out is going to be ranked. And so that, I think his thought is like, all right, let's see how well you do against him. And let me put this guy in the backfield and run a wheel route with him. And let's see your linebacker try to come up and take him when you're going to have to keep your outside corners on, two actual receivers that I have out there that can literally do damage to you. You can't just put a corner on him because he's lined up inside.
Right. And I mean, I definitely could see some creativity going to happen with Garrett Wilson going on, but I just think the most important thing is, Garrett Wilson, if he's one of the 22 guys on the field, he is the best player out of those 22 guys on the field. And I do think you're right. Ryan Day is going to start showcasing that a little bit more down the stretch here. Now, I don't know if Garrett Wilson's running a wheel route out of the backfield or not, but they're going to do, I think you're right. They could do a lot of creative things with them, but I'm so impressed with just how complete of a receiver he is. And like you said, Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's that possession guy in the slot. He can do everything, man. I still say he has I don't even know your technical term for it, but the quickest, short burst, short route running release out of anyone I'd ever seen. I mean, the guy is always open, just seconds after the ball snaps.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive stuff.
Yeah. I just think there's going to be doing so many different things with Garrett Wilson. It's just going to be nuts.
You have any semblance of a good run, decent running game down the stretch with those three. I mean, you are in a really good position that you could win a national title.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that now for sure. I mean, I've been seeing it for the last few weeks, but I think now if they got to take this game into the next game and the next game, they were a little inconsistent the last few weeks offensively, but I definitely think that what we saw offensively, especially if you can't come up with an offensive game plan to really match them, they're going to get their points against even good defenses.
Right. But we saw times that, years prior that there were inconsistent offensive performances. Justin Fields had one against Northwestern. He had another one against Alabama last year. And those were both, I don't even know if we had 300 yards total offense in either one of those games. I mean, even when you look at the times that our offense has been inconsistent in the run game this year, we're still putting up 500 to 600 yards. Now, of course, we've always talked about, you need to get points along with it. And those times they haven't scored as much as others, like Nebraska. They only had 26. They had 33 against Penn State. So that was respectable. But it's just, even when, the offense doesn't seem like it's clicking that much, you're almost there, like Northwestern and Alabama, you really weren't there at all on offense. I mean, you could just look at the offensive output in both those games. And a lot of Northwestern was being stubborn that Ryan Day wouldn't just run the ball down their throats from the very beginning. But, Alabama, just nothing ever got going against them. And this team has shown that, it's just like you're that close. You just got to figure it out in those games that the scoring's not working, that you're relying on these field goals because they're marching down the field on everybody.
Yeah. I definitely they ran a lot better plays this week in the red zone. So I definitely like that.
They just ran better plays altogether this week. So yeah, their offense was clicking. Definitely all started, the offensive line was starting to bully people again. And I just hope they get it going. Cause the one thing about, even though Michigan State might not have the best defense or comparable to the defenses they've had in the past, Michigan, I'm still saying they're overrated till I see it for myself against Ohio State. These guys, they're going to have defensive lines that are at least going to be able to trade punches with you for a little bit of this game.
Yeah, definitely agree. All right. So, I mean, it was pretty impressive performance on the offense. Let's move over to defense here. Um, I'm not really like upset about anything I saw on the defense. Like, I know a lot of people were, and the biggest, all right, a couple things, and I mean, I hate being. I'm not trying to be excuse guy and all this stuff. I know that you get kind of two different types of fans when you're dealing with the fans on Twitter. You get the ones that the sky is falling fans, and then you get the, you're a bad fan for criticizing the team types of
The
fans.
scarlet colored glasses fan.
Oh. So I try to be somewhere in the middle. I try to, when I'm really upset about some stuff, I try to say it, but I also try to talk about the positives. I'm not too worried right now about what I saw on defense. And here's my reasoning why. You said earlier the game was at one point 52-17. I think that's much more indicative to what the game probably should have ended up. There was some situations after that 52-17 where Ohio State, when I just talked about on offense, and this is how the game does, everything goes with each other. They probably could have ran the ball a little bit more after that point, and they kind of there were stretches where it's like literally maybe they would run it once and throw it the other two times and get a first down that way, where it's like keep running the ball. I don't know if Ohio State just decides at that point it's like we're primarily running the ball because we're gonna get through this game now. That I have serious doubts that Purdue gets to 31. My first point. Second point is that it just seemed like the whole Purdue is a style of offense, a spread style offense that does give Ohio State fits at different times throughout the last, how many years that style offense can give you fits. Michigan State's not that style of offense. Michigan's not that style of offense. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, I don't know how all that.
Definitely not that style of offense.
Are not that style of offense. And once you get if you get to the playoffs, Alabama can be that style of offense, but Georgia isn't. We've already played Oregon. They're really not. They maybe at one point in their life career they were, but they're not anymore.
Not now, yeah.
And I don't see, Cincinnati doesn't really have the personnel to really, and that's not really in there. I mean, they do some, but they're not like Purdue. Purdue's actually a good passing team, and they were 7th in the country in passing. Ohio State's philosophy, in my opinion, in that game was that we're putting a guy man-to-man on Bell, and we're going to give him. I mean, they played a lot more man-to-man in this game than they've been playing the last several weeks, and they put a guy on Bell, and they gave him safety help, and so that leaves a lot of space and open in the field for other things. So I think that to me, that's where it really comes down to.
And credit Denzel Burke, that guy that was on Bell, because even though he probably gave up more receptions than he had all year, I mean, he had 11 tackles, and David Bell had 10 or 11 catches, and he only had barely over 100 yards and no touchdown. So, and I know he did drop a touchdown, but that was just, it was a good performance. And yeah, like you said, I think they just, especially when you get up 35-7 out of nowhere, it's just there comes a point where it's like, all right, we're not going to let these guys beat us with 50-yard plays. Like, make them run the clock out on themselves by doing, quick passes over and over. Keep everything in front of you. You can let them use the full 53 yards of the field and just see what, they can do, and, force a, field goal on one of the drives, and then just, if they score, answer them. And there wasn't, it got to a point where it was just meaningless garbage time touchdowns. And I know, the free safety looked really bad on the one that he kept his eyes in the backfield, and he didn't continue to get deep on it. But I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get bent out of shape of a game that Ohio State was winning 52-17 and ends up winning 59-31. So at the point that the game is easily within hand, you get outscored 14-7. Like, that's just not something that's never going to bother me.
Yeah. Honestly,
I wish we would have got a sack, but everything was moving so quickly that, you really didn't have an opportunity.
That's the only thing I'm going to bring up. I think my biggest nitpick against the defense is not so much the passing defense. Is more that we just, and I get it that their whole goal is to get the ball out of the hand. I just wish they would have got a little bit more of a pass rush. I'm not even saying sacks, just get to him just a little bit more, make him maybe do a pump because he has to, somebody is in his face or something like that. And, he has to throw the ball away. I mean,
they didn't want to blitz, and they had no threat whatsoever that Purdue was going to beat them with their run game.
Yeah. And that's basically it. And when you get down into that type of game and Purdue is one-dimensional at that point, there's no way once that game starts getting out of hand from them, there's no way they're coming back by they're trying to make any pretend that they can run the ball. I mean, we saw in the first quarter when they were actually still trying to run the ball that, Ohio State, they were giving up a couple yards here and there. They weren't doing anything running the ball against Ohio State. And once that game got out of hand, Purdue just dropped that. There was we're throwing the ball 50 something times today or whatever, and it probably ended up being, and I'm sure that was about that. And
it was over 50.
Yeah. And so it's like they know what they were doing, and so I don't have any. I just wish we got a little bit more of a pass rush, and I think I would have been more. That's my biggest nitpick. The passing defense. I've already named my reasons why I'm not too worried about it. If Michigan State goes out and throws for 300 plus yards on them this week, and starts approaching 400 yards passing, we'll have a different conversation next week.
Yeah, but what did Kenneth Walker do at that point? I mean, I guess we're just going to have to see.
Yeah. But I just don't think Michigan State can do that. And I don't think they have this type of offense that is going to really spread Ohio State out to try to do that. And, Ohio State could have ran the ball more in the second half, and they could have went completely to the zone and, forced Purdue to go on a little longer drives. But they chose to do what they did. They might have realized that, hey, David Bell's a good practice guy on right now with, he's one of the best guys. Let's force Denzel to go into some more man situations than he's had to do the previous weeks because, no, you may be up against a big receiver here. You might have to go up against, Michigan's got some decent I don't know if they got a quarterback can get it to them, but, they got some down the field threats, and when you get into the playoffs, both Georgia and Alabama has guys that, can stretch the field. So, maybe that's just kind of the thought process that it's good to this is a good guy because he's one of the best in the country to do some man-to-man work with because, kind of proves where Denzel's at right now. And I felt like he's at where he should, it's, you kind of hesitate coming up every week being like, he's one of the best corners in the country. He's one of the best corners in the country. I feel a lot better doing it now because, he gave 103 yards, but, the guy didn't score on him. He also had a few incompletes go that way. Denzel was running with him every, there wasn't a time where the guy was necessarily out in front of him. Denzel's a damn good cover corner.
Yeah, he is. So I was very impressed with his performance. I don't think he graded out as a champion. I thought that was kind of strange.
Well, hey, sometimes that's not grading the champions. It's a motivational thing too. And, it's like you did good. You just got to do a little bit better. You know what? You're graded against the best in this program. So, you got that stuff like that's good.
Yeah. I saw a lot of people questioning, does Ohio State have a defense like a national championship caliber defense? And yes, I think they're good enough that they can win a national title. And I mean, it's all predicated on the offense because if the offense plays like they did against Purdue, I don't think any team is close enough that it matters. That, even Georgia, and I know like some people be like, oh, well, Georgia doesn't give up points. If the Ohio State offense plays like they did against, Purdue, and we've seen other times this year, of course, against worse competition, but Purdue, it was starting to get going. The play calling was starting to get more creative. They were starting to realize where their weaknesses have been the past couple weeks, and they've eliminated those. And they look damn good doing it. And I'm not sure there's a team that can stay within 10 points of them when they're doing that.
Yeah.
Even Georgia.
Well, that's the thing with Georgia. And we're going to get a lot of answers because Bama's a better offense, we're going to get more answers about Georgia here in a couple of weeks than we've gotten all year.
Mhm.
And, I know Tennessee was the quote unquote best offense they played all year. Tennessee's not a good football team, though. Like, that might be the quote unquote best offense you played all year, but that's not on the same field level as Ohio State. And does Ohio State have a championship caliber defense? So much of this stuff has kind of changed over the years that, like, that 2014 defense was really, really good. Now, and they still gave up, 35 points to Alabama and stuff like that. And so you get into games like this now. The rules of the game is focusing against the defenses now. Everything's on the offenses. They don't targeting penalties on offensive football players,
Right.
So, and that's just another thing now that everybody has to worry about. So, it's only been in the last couple of years where they've really started calling face masks against offensive linemen and stuff like that. That is a lot of that stuff. As long as you weren't holding the jerseys, they didn't give a crap what you were doing to the guy's helmet, and so, so much things have there's so much in the rules, how quickly the game stops after every first down that just favors the offense.
Yeah. And I just, again, I don't, they just have the offense that is good enough that, like, this year has been kind of a strange year because as explosive as offenses have been the last, couple years, you really haven't seen an offense with it all put together nearly as many times as what you've seen Ohio State this year. So I'm very confident, with them moving forward and just seeing how good that offense has looked. And the defense has enough players that if they play safe, I think they can get, stops, enough of them that when that offense is rolling like it did against Purdue, like it had several times this year, that I think they can beat anybody.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
And so, yeah, there's not much more I want to, take away from the game. I think our defense, obviously the defense could have done better, but if you look at, I'll pull up the box score. So they gave up 390 yards passing on 52 attempts, so 40 completions. And they gave up 91 yards rushing on 19 carries. So it wasn't even that bad of a day running the ball. They almost averaged 5 yards per carry. But I just think Ohio State knew that this is what Purdue was going to get caught doing. They were going to try to throw on us. And so it's kind of like the reverse of what happened the last time when we were in West Lafayette, that they kind of were like, they're not going to be able to throw, 70 times to beat us. And Haskins threw 70 times and we weren't able to beat them. So,
we talked about that a couple weeks ago. That always is just a making of a disaster.
Mm-hmm. So I'm good. I think that's a good way to end the Purdue game. Anything you want to else about Purdue you want to talk about?
No. Sorry, my freaking this cough is.
I'm wondering when they see the video of this, how it's going to look with you coughing. I think that'll be pretty funny. All right. Well, we could talk about then the playoff.
Let's get into the rankings. So top 7 is the same. So Georgia, Bama, Oregon, ourselves, Michigan State, and or Cincinnati, Michigan State. So not much to say. I was wondering if it was last week or this past week, was this the week that we finally did something to pass up Oregon?
Well, Gary Barta again came out and he said that, Oregon came into Columbus and they beat us. And so he's still like talking about that marquee win for them, that head-to-head victory for them. I still don't understand why Michigan State's below Michigan, though. If you're going to say one, why not say the other? I realize that one was on the road, but I just don't get where Oregon stays in front of us. Michigan State does not go in front of Michigan. I didn't have a problem with the top 7 last week outside of that little thing. I don't have a problem with it again. I still think Cincinnati might be a little bit of fool's gold and they need a ton of help to get into the playoff, which even if everything holds pat, I'm not sure outside of Alabama losing a second game. I mean, obviously, if Oregon loses a second game, I think that gives Cincinnati that opportunity to move up. If we lose a second game, that gives Cincinnati an opportunity to move up. But then again, look who would be, one of the two teams beating us if it wasn't in the conference title game. It would be Michigan State or Michigan. So they would ultimately jump Cincinnati, I would have to imagine, and that would keep them out of there. So they still need a lot of help. Of course, they still need Notre Dame to win out, which I think they could. I took a lot of exception towards the bottom of this, though, that Mississippi State gets their fourth loss against, and or they're a 4-loss team, but then no, they beat Auburn. Excuse me. They were a 4-loss team, but they beat Auburn. So they get to, jump into the top 25. And, we got Purdue. They drop out and they lose a game to the number 4 team in the country. So I don't know. It just seems like there's a little bit of bias. I hate to, say it, whatever, but A&M, they dropped 5 spots after their loss, which I think they only put up like 10 points, 13 points, something like that against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I don't think they're really 19, excuse me. So they're not known for being like a defensive juggernaut or anything. So I was always baffled why A&M got to go all the way up to number 11 in the country anyways. I think it's very surprising though that OU loses one game and they're at 13 and A&M lost, they were at 2 games down and they were number 11 in the country. So I know OU hasn't looked impressive this year. They got their first loss, but I thought that was just kind of, strange on that. Iowa though keeps moving up. Wisconsin, they're getting a lot of love. They're 15 now. So that's, if they're going to be the team that we get in Indianapolis, assuming that we get there, that's going to be a big win for us. Cause if they keep winning, if they're 15 now, I would expect them to be 12 or higher come the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything you just said. The Mississippi State thing, of course, I don't want to hear that, there's no bias with the committee with the SEC. There's plenty of bias with the SEC, with the committee. It's just, it always, I had a problem last week when Penn State's not in with 3 losses, but Auburn is in with 3 losses, and Penn State beat Auburn. That was kind of annoying to me. The one thing Barta did say that I kind of felt interesting, the last several weeks when they talk about Oregon, Ohio State, they've really only said Oregon had a better marquee win and Ohio State hasn't had that marquee win. They haven't really talked a lot about the head-to-head yet against each other. This was really the first week where they said that, where they talked about that Ohio State, Oregon actually was matched against each other. And there was actually debate, and the head-to-head came into the conversation. So I'm starting to think that, I don't know, Ohio State, if they handle their business, look pretty good against Michigan State, this might be the week where they jump them. But it definitely feels like if they beat Michigan State and then go beat Michigan, that Ohio State's probably number 3 at that point. And
assuming one of those teams don't drop out of the top 25 because of it.
Yeah, that's true. And so that's kind of just my thoughts on that. And he did mention that Bama, Oregon, and Ohio State were all kind of talked together this week about, where they're lining up. So, I don't know if, I definitely know Alabama is out if they get a second loss. I'm feeling more and more comfortable with that, because I'm assuming Cincinnati's winning out. And if Georgia goes and beats Alabama, I think Cincinnati's in at that point. The Big Ten East team of whoever makes it through this gauntlet, I'm pretty sure it's going to be us, but we'll see here the next couple weeks. As long as they win the conference championship, I think they're in. It comes down to Oregon then. I think any, and obviously if Oregon loses a game, they're out. And I think they are. There was a point of me a couple weeks ago where, especially when the rankings first came out, I've been like, I was more worried about Cincinnati, I think, than I was ever worried about Oregon. And even with the head-to-head match, after that first week when they're like, well, Oregon has a marquee win and Ohio State doesn't yet. And I'm just looking at where everybody's lining up in the schedule. And I was just like, yeah, but Ohio State's going to have opportunities at marquee wins where necessarily Oregon's not. So Ohio State could end up with 2 or 3 marquee wins here. and Oregon not. So like, if I was Oregon, I was starting to get really concerned about Oklahoma. Now at the point of now, I think if Oregon wins out, even though they could both have one loss and be conference champions, that I think that's a much bigger climb now for Oklahoma with the loss at this point, even though they got competition on the schedule to where they could do it, you know.
Yeah. And
if the right things fall their way and they win out, you know, they're not even out of it yet. Like they got some good games still on the schedule, and you know, they're a marquee name. You know, somebody's got to lose that SEC game. If it's Alabama, that's 2. You know, are they going to really keep Cincinnati in there undefeated against a one-loss conference champion Oklahoma? You know, Oregon could very easily, you know, they got a tough Utah game coming up, you know, here, and then they got possibly play them again, or is it going to be definitely Utah again, or is it possibly Arizona State?
I don't know if that's decided or not. It's probably.
I think it's Arizona. It's because it's not one of the Los Angeles schools, is it?
No, it's Utah, or it's going to be one of those 2 teams that you mentioned. I think it's Utah. That might already be locked up as the conference title game. I'm not sure if it is or not, but it's pretty close. I got an interesting scenario question for you though. So let's say, you know, mostly everything holds pat in the top 4. And I'm going to say Ohio State wins this because of just the positioning of Michigan State in Michigan. But either Oregon or Alabama lose a second game, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Without a conference title game and the head-to-head loss with Cincinnati, sitting at 8, if they win out, is there any chance Notre Dame could get in over Cincinnati? I mean, what a kick in the balls would that be?
If it was any other team sitting there, okay. Let's say that if Cincinnati was undefeated and didn't play Notre Dame, and let's say, okay, we'll say they have another marquee win somewhere, you know, they beat Baylor. I don't know. We'll just say something like that. Somebody that's got some recognition right now. And you know, I don't know if Cincinnati could fend off Notre Dame. In this type of scenario, I think Cincinnati will fend off Notre Dame, because if that was a Power 5 conference champion, though, at a one loss, and Cincinnati was the one loss, like, say Cincinnati, we'll say it just because this is our channel. Cincinnati beats Ohio State week 2. Ohio State goes on undefeated, crushes the Big Ten, and Cincinnati has the schedule. I don't know if Cincinnati holds Ohio State out because they are a Power 5 champion.
Right.
And Notre Dame is an independent. Notre Dame has gotten some benefits of the doubt over the last few years, but it's never been against a team that actually beat them. And I don't know if an independent that doesn't play a conference championship game is going to end up getting that benefit of the doubt. So, you know, I think Cincinnati is still good. Would it surprise me? No, because nothing this committee ever does will surprise me. And Cincinnati is going to get in as begrudgingly and I don't care what rainbows and, you know, roses, unicorns, rainbows, everything that they throw at you on that selection day. If Cincinnati gets in as the 4 seed, that they tell you about how Cincinnati was always in their minds and blah, blah, blah. That is going to be like, literally, like, they might revote that thing 5 times. Like, Are we sure are we positive Cincinnati's going in? That's just my opinion on it.
It's hard for anyone behind them, I think, to climb up because, you know, you got some 2-loss schools. Wake's not going to get into it. Oklahoma State, maybe if they win out, I would doubt it, but they're sitting there at 9. So, and I mean, in my scenario, you know, Ohio State's beaten both Michigan and Michigan State. So neither one of them are going to climb up over Cincinnati. So I don't know. I think maybe your only chances would be OU. And I know they're sitting behind Oklahoma State right now, but let's face it, name means something to the committee. So if they're, you know,
State, how many losses does Oklahoma State and Baylor have?
Oklahoma State has 1, Baylor has 2.
Okay. Oklahoma State wins out. That could be an interesting thing for Cincinnati because that is a Power 5. And it's not Oklahoma. So Cincinnati might survive it. If that was Oklahoma, like if Oklahoma lost earlier in the year and they've well positioned themselves back into the top 10 at this point, I would be really scared if I was Cincinnati. Like if Oklahoma was sitting right now with one loss at number 8, I would almost be saying right now that if Oklahoma wins out there at like if one of those other, if Oregon and Alabama both or one of them lose, that would be what I would say. And so I think coming from 13, Cincinnati's in better shape right now, so they might get a benefit of the doubt of it being Oklahoma State and not Oklahoma. But Big 12, that's a Power 5, and that's that could be a situation there for them.
Who all beat Baylor this year? I don't even know. They lost to Oklahoma State. Oh, and they lost to TCU. Okay, I'm like, who all beat Baylor?
That's right. TCU did just beat them a few
barely.
Weeks ago.
Yeah, they got them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's all interesting to look at. I think in my scenario, Cincinnati does, keep the 4th spot, but it's interesting. I don't think I'm with you. I know people are. I got to see it to believe it. If Alabama, if they keep them in as a 2-loss non-conference champion, I just don't see it happening.
No, I don't see it happening. I think something else has to shake in somewhere.
Yeah, I think Oregon has to lose and Cincinnati has to lose a game for that to happen.
And even that,
or Ohio State.
Yeah, but now if Cincinnati, if let's say if Alabama loses, Oregon loses, Cincinnati loses. Now that other scenario you just talked about a couple of minutes ago, now that comes into play. I don't know if a 2-loss Alabama gets in over a 1-loss Notre Dame.
I think
Notre Dame gets the 4th seed at that point.
Yeah. And they got a lot working against them, so they just got to hope they win that conference title game.
I think a lot of the interesting thing is, there's going to be some interesting stuff if Alabama knocks Georgia off, and let's say it's a 10-plus, victory. I think anything under 10, Georgia's probably in. I just don't know where they're going to slot them because I don't think they're going to want to play them back-to-back weeks. So, like, that might be like a weird situation where Alabama is 2, Ohio State's 3, and then Ohio State's magically number 1 after that point because they don't, and Alabama's still at number 2, like, or Georgia only falls to 3, and but because I don't think they'll want them to play back-to-back weeks, but who knows? I mean, they might.
Okay. I don't think Alabama does this, but they beat Georgia by 3 to 4 scores. Georgia better be the 4th seed. Because I think they would keep them in top 4 because let's face it, that's how it's going to be. But they better be the 4th seed if that happens.
It would be
and Alabama should be the 1 seed at that point because they just drilled the number 1 team in the country and they're number 2.
That would definitely be besides like us beating Michigan the one year, that would be definitely because it would be in a conference champion. That would be the first time any team, if Georgia would lose semi-handily and then get kicked out of the playoffs, that would be the first time that somebody lost in a conference championship game since we've been in the playoffs, right? And be kicked out of a playoff berth, or does that happen?
Oh, you're saying loss in the conference title game and then they don't get in because of that loss? Yeah, I think everyone's been able to win their conference title game outside of Notre Dame last year, but they stayed in. So yeah, exactly. So I don't think that's ever happened where someone's lost and they've been knocked out of the playoffs because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess probably Auburn 17 with 2 losses. They were probably up there, but they didn't deserve to be.
I think if there was the thing with Notre Dame last year is I think if there was some other teams kind of mixed up there that deserved in, they probably would have gotten off that loss. But last year, I think everybody knew who the top 4 teams were.
Yeah.
And that's who it was. Some interesting scenarios. It will definitely be interesting how the next couple of weeks. I'm really interested how that SEC championship game goes. I think if we win out, obviously if we win out, we're fine. We're in at this point. I don't think there's an argument into that, especially with Oklahoma losing that. Cincinnati isn't getting in over us. I think the committee has made that clear right now. I think, they have the Notre Dame win but Ohio State's going to have,
better wins,
two top 10 wins and, a top 3 win or top 15 win, come the championship
3 weeks in a row.
And there's a possibility that, depending on what happens, I mean, if Oregon loses this week, if something like that happens, right, they're playing Utah this week, right?
Correct.
So if Utah beats them, we beat Michigan State, Michigan's a top 5 team that. So then we're playing a top, and then not only we're going to beat a top, 10 team in Michigan State, we're also going to end up beating a top 5 team in Michigan. So so there's a lot more favor going in for Ohio State than pretty much anybody outside of the 2 SEC schools.
I mean,
just because
as you said, winning you're in. Like there was a point where I thought, because of the teams that were still around, still undefeated, if Oregon started beating the crap out of everybody and we did, that's, where we get into trouble, that we might have been held out. But at this point, if both teams finish undefeated, committee's just going to put both of them in the playoffs.
Yeah. And that's how I definitely feel.
Not undefeated, but went out.
If they went out, yes, I understood what you meant. All right. Anything else you kind of want to throw out there with the rankings?
No, I'm good for tonight. We'll see everyone back on Thursday or Friday for our Michigan State preview show.
And apologies to everybody watching with the coughing fit there.
Hey,
got the microphone off.
You got the microphone off.
The cough is getting a lot better, especially over the last couple of days, but I'm still getting a couple times during the day where I'm getting like a nasty coughing fit. And unfortunately, right there.
It hit tonight. So that's all right. Well, let's get on out of here then. So thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.